Zorki, Russian, meaning sharp-sighted, is the name of a series of 35mm rangefinder cameras manufactured in the Soviet Union between 1948 and 1978. The Zorki was a product of the Krasnogorsk Mechanical Factory, KMZ, which also produced the Zenit single-lens reflex camera, SLR. The first Zorki cameras were inexpensive Leica II copies just like the Fed. But later models were considerably different from the Leica. When using most Zorki cameras, the shutter speed should only be set after the shutter has been cocked. Setting the shutter speed before the shutter is cocked can permanently damage the camera. This especially affects all Zorki cameras with slow shutter speeds under 1/30th of a second. In particular the Zorki-3 and Zorki-4 models. Zorki, Zorki II. The first Zorki was the Zorki, called Zorki I by some for clarity, although it never had a number in the name. An exact copy of the 1932 Leica II rangefinder. It featured a 50mm f3.5 INDUSTAR-22 lens. A collapsible lens which looked like the Light Elmer but was actually a copy of the Zeiss Tessa. Introduced in 1948, the Zorki was the first 35mm camera made by KMZ. The Zorki S of 1955 added flash synchronization. The Zorki II, 1954, was similar to the Zorki but featured an updated rewind mechanism, a self-timer and strap lugs. There was a later flash version called the Zorki IIs. Zorki-3, introduced in 1951. The Zorki-3 was somewhat similar to the Leica III. It offered a number of improvements over the original Zorki, including a large combined viewfinder with a rangefinder built in, a removable back, and a larger and faster Jupiter 8 lens. Zeiss sonocopy lens. It also added a new mechanism for slow shutter speeds with the separate selector dial on the front of the camera. This mechanism was unreliable, so the improved Zorki 3M of 1954, also produced in 1955, combined all of the shutter speeds on a single dial. The Zorki 3S, introduced in 1955, was a Zorki 3M with flash sync. Zorki 4. The Zorki 4, 1956, was a Zorki 3S with self-timer added. The Zorki 4K was identical but used an advanced lever instead of the old-style wind knob. With over 2 million units produced, the Zorki 4 was the most successful Zorki and has a reputation as one of the best Russian cameras. Although the self-timer and slow shutter speeds were unreliable, the Zorki Mir of 1959 was a lower-cost Zorki 4 with fewer shutter speeds. Zorki 35M. The Zorki 35M full-frame 35mm coupled rangefinder camera was a project undertaken by KMZ designer N. Marienkov during the late 1960s. The M is his signature camera. He also designed the Zorki 3M and the Zenit 3M. It was based on the body of the Zenit E and some of the advanced design features of the Zenit D. But as a rangefinder rather than SLR camera. It was to feature bright line frames in the viewfinder for 50mm and 85mm lenses, with the entire field of the viewfinder corresponding to that of a 35mm lens. Other advances included automatic parallax compensation, speeds from 1 to 1/1000th of a second, and a modern body design. It was probably an attempt to make an updated alternative for the then-aging Zorki 4. At least 2 hand-built prototypes of this camera are known to exist, and the KMZ archives list it as a project. But it never went into production. Zorki 5/6. The Zorki 5 was an updated model similar to the Fed II. There were 2 different versions. The first, 1958. Having an INDUSTAR-22 lens in the second. 1959. Having an INDUSTAR-50. Like early Leicas, the Zorki-5 was loaded with film by removing the bottom plate. The Zorki-6 was identical to the later version Zorki-5 but with a removable back for easier loading. Zorki, the 10th of November 12. The Zorki-10 was a modern-style 35mm rangefinder camera with a selenium light meter and shutter. Priority automatic exposure introduced in 1964. The Zorki-11 was a cheaper model without the rangefinder, and the Zorki-12 was a variant using Agfa's rapid film cartridges. All three variants had fixed, non-interchangeable lenses. The Zorki-10 is a fixed-lens Zorki-coupled rangefinder camera with an integrated light meter. Selenium meter cells surround the lens. This was the first fully automatic camera produced in the former Soviet Union, as well as the first to use ASA DIN markings rather than the Soviet GOST numbers. However, these ASA numbers were still mostly useless as they didn't match any known film speeds. Some Zorki-10 cameras apparently had GOST numbers instead of ASA though, as it's shown in a Polish camera manual. The shutter releases a small lever protruding from the right-hand side of the lens. Shutter speeds from 1/30th to 1/500th were available in automatic mode. It also provided a bulb setting, though there is no way to attach a cable release. Apertures from 2.8 to 22 with constant shutter speed of 1/30th could be set in manual mode. Intended for use with an electronic flash. Flash sync is possible at all shutter speeds through the PC terminal. There is an accessory shoe provided, but it does not sync with flash. The Zorki-11 is a Zorki-10 without the coupled rangefinder mechanism, but with distance symbols visible in the viewfinder. Technical specifications. Film type: 135 frame size. 24 by 36 mm viewfinder magnification. 0.65x rangefinder base. 38 mm lens. Industar 63. 45 mm f2.8. 4-element Tessar type. Angle of view: 51.3 degree min. Focusing distance: 1.5 meters. Shutter leaf: electronically controlled in auto mode. 1/30th SAB in manual mode. Exposure metering: external with selenium meter. Shutter speed range: 1/30th 1/500th. B aperture range: 2.8 to 22. Automatic exposure range: 818 EV. Manual exposure range: 814 EV. Film speed range: 20320. ASA 1426 DIN 16250. GOST flash sync: 1/30th film advance. Manual self-timer. Mechanical 8 to 15s delay filter thread. M52.5 by 0.75 tripod thread. 1/4 or 3/8, depending of manufacture period. Dimensions: 129 by 77 by 76 mm. Weight: 750 grams. List of Zorki cameras. Zorki 1948 to 1956. Zorki-3 1951 to 1954. Zorki-2 1954 to 1956. Zorki-3M 1954-1955. Zorki-S 1955 to 1958. Zorki-2S 1955 to 1960. Zorki-3S 1955-1956. Zorki-4 1956 to 1973. Zorki-35M prototype only. C 1969. Zorki-5 1958-1959. Zorki-Mir, 1959–1961. Zorki-6, 1959–1966. Zorki-10, 1964. Zorki-11, 1964. Zorki-12, 1967. Zorki-4K, 1972–1978. Zorki Survival Site by J. Javier. Overview of different types of Zorki cameras by Soviet Cams. Zorki-3 by Luis Triguez.